CutList Plus is used by thousands of woodworkers to quickly generate cutting diagrams and estimate cost. Today we'll be taking an in-depth look at how to work with parts in CutList Plus. Here are some of the topics we'll be covering in this tutorial: milled parts, hardware and labor parts, customizing the display, glued up panels, and tips for making changes easy. CutList Plus can handle 3 different types of parts, and each type gets its own screen. The screen you'll use the most is simply labeled parts, also known as milled parts. For these parts, simply enter the quantity, size, and material, then CutList Plus will do the rest. Next, we'll look at the other items screen where you can list things like hardware and supplies. Finally, the labor screen is where you can specify how much labor of any type the project requires. We'll look at all 3 of these screens in a bit, but for now let's look at the milled parts in more detail. In the Getting Started video, you learned how to add a new milled part by clicking on the blank row. Since you already know how to do that, we'll go ahead and start with an example parts list already loaded so I can show you how to work with the list. There are some really easy ways to customize and organize your list. You can sort all the entries by column by simply clicking on the column header. You can drag a column with your mouse to change its position. Just click on the column header and drag while holding down the mouse button, then release it when you get it to where you want it. And if you right-click with your mouse on the column headers, you can hide or display individual columns to make the display as simple or as complex as you'd like. Next, I want to teach you a couple of really useful tips: how to edit a bunch of parts all at once, and how you can use what we call primary and secondary materials in your workflow. I'll go ahead and select the parts I want to edit as a group by clicking the mouse and dragging across them. Then I'll click on the Group Edit button on the main toolbar, which will bring up the Group Edit screen, which allows me to edit all the parts at once. For this example, I'm going to change the material type from sheet good to primary material, which you'll understand in just a minute. I'll then click OK, and you'll see all the selected parts are updated. Now I'll change the 2 dimension lumber parts to secondary material. Since there are only 2, I'll go ahead and do it right from the parts screen. By assigning my parts to primary and secondary materials, I've made it simple to change this project's materials if I'd like to use 2 different types of wood when I build another version in the future. If we go ahead and select the Project Settings button in the toolbar, then choose Cherry Plywood for the primary material, and Cherry Dimension Lumber as the secondary material, then click OK. The whole project has been updated with my new materials. Let's look at a few other ways you can customize the parts list. When you right-click on a part, a pop-up menu will appear with several options. I'll go ahead and click on Add Edit Note to add a note. You can type literally anything you want as your note, and when you click OK, a small red triangle appears in the corner right next to your part number. This is your signal that a note exists for the part, and when you hover the mouse over the part, the note pops up as a convenient tooltip. When you print your parts list, the note will appear on a separate line, which allows for longer text. One of the other items on the pop-up menu you might have noticed was Convert to Glued Up Panel. You can use this when you want to make a large part, such as a tabletop, by gluing several narrow pieces together. You can also get to this option by selecting Add Glued Up Part from the Parts menu, which brings up the Glued Up Parts wizard. For this example, I'll be setting up a tabletop that is 36 inches wide by 50 inches long. I only need 1 tabletop, so we'll go ahead and leave the panel quantity at its default value of 1. I like to leave a little extra on the width and length so I can trim the panel after the glue is set, so I'll enter 1 inch of extra panel trim for both. I'm going to go ahead and indicate that the individual pieces shouldn't exceed 4 inches in width, but that's just my preference and you can choose any size you like. Now when I click on the Calculate button, CutList Plus fills in the results area with the sizes I'll need. Looks like I'll need 10 pieces for the whole glue up. Then I'll just click Done, and the 10 pieces are added to my project. You can also customize the way dimensions are displayed. Go ahead and click on the User Preferences button in the main toolbar. You'll see a lot of options for formatting dimensions when the window pops up. You can switch between English and metric units, and you can hide the display of the units themselves. You can also change the way the part numbers are generated. Instead of numbers, you can choose letters or your own custom text, but you can feel free to play around with this at your own pace. There's one last thing I want to show you on the milled parts list before moving on to other items and labor. On occasion, you'll notice that certain rows have a colored background. Both colors mean something different. A blue background means that the parts are a pin diagram, or a diagram you don't want changed. The program won't let you edit these parts as long as they're pinned. The orange background means the part doesn't fit on any cutting diagram. There could be many reasons for this. The part might be too wide or too thick for the stock, or maybe you don't have enough inventory and have told the program not to allow purchase of new stock. Whatever the reason, the orange background serves as your warning so you can investigate further. Let's take a quick look at the Other Items screen and add some hardware to our example project. Go ahead and click on the Other Items tab. Now go ahead and click on the blank row to add a new line. Then choose Hardware from the Categories drop-down menu. You can add categories if you need to. Then, tab over to the Item column, and select Hinges from the drop-down menu. Again, you can customize these. Refer to the Materials video for more information. The Description column is completely optional. And in the Quantity column, I'll go ahead and indicate that I need 4 hinges. Now, if we click over to the Labor screen, you'll see that it operates in pretty much the same way. Go ahead and select a labor type from the drop-down menu, and we'll indicate that this task will take 2.5 hours of labor in the Hours column. And that's it! I've shown you the most common ways to customize the parts display and taught you the basics of Other Items and Labor. Now you can feel free to play around with the program, and make sure to go ahead and check out our other video tutorials to learn what else CutList Plus has to offer.